Listen carefully, because what I'm about to reveal to you about the exact moment when narcissists finally break will shake everything you thought you knew about human psychological resilience. There is a specific breaking point, documented by Jordan Peterson over decades of clinical research, where even the most resilient, most manipulative, most psychologically fortified narcissists simply can no longer sustain their grandiose delusions. And when that moment arrives, the collapse isn't gradual or graceful. It's utterly devastating. What Peterson discovered about this breaking point will shock you about the fundamental fragility of the human psyche when forced to confront unbearable truths. If you want to understand what's really going on inside a narcissist's mind when the mask falls, subscribe to the channel, like it, and comment below if you already suspected that one day this collapse would happen. The moment when narcissists finally break is not random or unpredictable. Peterson discovered that there is a specific psychological formula, a convergence of factors that creates what he calls structural psychological failure. It's like a building that can withstand individual earthquakes, isolated hurricanes, or separate foundation problems, but when all these stresses converge simultaneously, the entire structure collapses instantaneously. Para narcisistas, essa fórmula envolve três elementos críticos occurring simultaneously: complete loss of external validation sources, undeniable evidence of their destructive impact, and the failure of all their psychological defense mechanisms at once. Peterson, baseando-se em decades of clinical observation e deep understanding of personality psychology, documented que quando esses três fatores align, even the most psychologically resilient narcissist experiences what can only be described as personality disintegration. Mas você consegue imaginar what it means para someone who has built their entire identity around being superior, admired, in control, to suddenly lose all sources of that identity while being confronted with irrefutable proof of their own destructiveness. According to recent studies in neuropsychology of trauma, the narcissistic brain literally cannot process this level of contradiction without entering crisis mode. Like trying to run software that requires 100 units of processing power on a machine that only has 10 units available. The system doesn't slow down gradually, it crashes completely. E for narcisistas, this crash isn't just emotional, existential. It's questioning not just what they've done, but who they fundamentally are. E então, the breaking point arrives with devastating precision. Peterson describes this moment as one of the most psychologically brutal experiences a human being can endure. It's not just recognizing flaws or admitting mistakes. Watching your entire sense of self dissolve in real time, while being unable to construct any alternative identity that feels authentic or sustainable. The first component of this breaking formula, complete loss of external validation, occurs quando narcisistas simultaneously lose all their primary sources of admiration and attention. This might mean divorce, job loss, social ostracism, legal consequences, estrangement from children, all happening within a short time period. Each individual loss would be manageable, mas quando they compound, the narcissist's psychological foundation simply cannot support the weight. Peterson explains that narcissistas don't just enjoy external validation, they require it for basic psychological functioning. And no unlike how we need oxygen to breathe. Quando that oxygen is suddenly cut off from multiple sources simultaneously, psychological suffocation begins immediately. Mas será que loss of validation alone é enough to break uma narcisista? Peterson's research reveals que não. Many narcissistas can survive temporary loss of admiration by creating new sources of validation, or by convincing themselves that their losses are temporary setbacks. The breaking point requires the second component, undeniable evidence of destructive impact. Você consegue imagine being presented simultaneously com documented proof que every major relationship in your life failed because of your specific behaviors. Court records showing systematic workplace harassment. Medical records showing family members requiring therapy para anxiety and depression directly linked to your emotional abuse. Financial records showing how your manipulation cost people their savings, their homes, their security. Deixa nos comentários se you've ever seen someone confronted. Come this level of systematic evidence about their impact on others. But even these two components together, loss of validation plus undeniable evidence of harm, are not always sufficient to break uma narcisista. Peterson discovered that the critical third component is the simultaneous failure of all psychological defense mechanisms. This happens quando their ability to deny, rationalize, blame others, you reframe reality, simply stops functioning all at once. Like having all your circuit breakers trip simultaneously. Normally, narcissistas can deflect criticism by blaming the critic, questioning their motives, you finding flaws in their presentation. But quando overwhelming evidence comes from multiple independent sources, quando the pattern is undeniable, quando even their most sophisticated psychological defenses cannot find purchase, the protective barriers simply collapse. Peterson described casos and he's witnessed this exact moment quando uma narcisista's face literally changes as their defensive systems fail. And not sadness or anger, uma kind of blank confusion, like someone trying to run mental software that has suddenly stopped responding. Mas o que happens in the immediate aftermath of this breaking point vai shock you profoundly. Peterson revealed that narcissistas in this state frequently experience what he calls identity vertigo, uma disorienting psychological state, and they literally don't know who they are without their defensive illusions. Imagine waking up tomorrow and discovering that every belief você had about yourself was systematically false. That every success você thought você earned was actually built on destroying others. That every relationship você valued was actually você manipulating people who were trying to love você despite your toxicity. You then imagine having no alternative identity to fall back on because your entire sense of self was constructed around those false beliefs. E aqui está the most terrifying part. According to Peterson, muitos narcisistas in this breaking state develop what he calls reconstruction panic, onde they desperately attempt to rebuild their shattered identity immediately, but lack any authentic foundation para reconstruction. They cycle rapidly through different personalities, different explanations para their behavior, different narratives about who they really are. And like someone frantically trying to rebuild a house while the foundation is still crumbling, nothing they construct has stability because the underlying structure cannot support it. Você consegue. Imagine being psychologically unable to maintain uma consistent sense of who você are for more than a few hours or days at uma time. Peterson describes this as one of the most psychologically disturbing states a human being can experience. Complete identity instability combined with desperate need para psychological coherence. Mas deixa-me tell você something que will completely change your perspective on narcissistic breaking points. According to Peterson's research, existe uma crucial difference between narcissistas who break and never recover and those who somehow manage to use the breaking point as uma foundation para genuine reconstruction. The difference lies na capacity to tolerate what Peterson calls identity void, being able to exist without uma coherent sense of self para extended periods while slowly authentically rebuilding from scratch. É uma psychological skill que require enormous tolerance para uncertainty and discomfort. Peterson argues that most people, narcissista or not, lack this capacity. We are psychologically designed to maintain some sense of consistent identity, porque complete identity dissolution would be literally maddening. For narcissistas who constructed elaborate false identities specifically to avoid psychological discomfort, tolerating identity void is almost impossible. E então surge uma question que few have the courage to explore. forcing someone to their psychological breaking point ever justified? Peterson, from his deeply pragmatic but humane perspective, suggests that sometimes yes, quando they're unbroken, psychological pattern involves systematic harm to others, que will continue indefinitely without intervention, but he também acknowledges que breaking someone psychologically is extraordinarily dangerous. Unlike other forms of therapeutic intervention could generally lead to healing, forcing narcissistic breaking points can result in permanent psychological damage, severe mental illness, or even suicide. Mas here's something que will deixar você completely disturbed. Peterson revealed that even narcissists who successfully navigate their breaking point, who reconstruct healthier identities, who appear to undergo genuine transformation, the majority eventually find ways to use their breaking experience as uma nova source of narcissistic supply. They become the transformed narcisista, the one who talks openly about their journey through psychological collapse, who shares insights about their reconstruction process, who uses their apparent vulnerability and growth as a way to gain admiration and attention. A narcissismo rebuilt around the narrative of having overcome narcissismo. Peterson describes this as phoenix narcissismo, narcissismo that rises from the ashes of the previous narcissismo, often more sophisticated and harder to detect because it incorporates language of humility and self-awareness while maintaining the fundamental dynamic of requiring external validation para identity maintenance. Leave your thoughts below. Is it possible for a narcissist to genuinely break and reconstruct without turning that process into a performance? Peterson's answer is cautiously optimistic para uma extraordinarily small minority. He documents cases on the narcissistas after genuine breaking and reconstruction withdraw completely from seeking recognition para their transformation. They don't talk about their insights, don't seek credit para their growth, don't try to help others através sharing their story. Instead, they quietly dedicate themselves to practical actions to minimize harm y, quando possible, make concrete amends without expectation of acknowledgement or forgiveness. Their reconstruction is private, unglamorous, and focused entirely on behavioral change rather than identity performance. But this kind of authentic reconstruction post-breaking is so rare that Peterson estimates it occurs in less than 0.5% of narcissists who experience genuine breaking points. The vast majority either never recover incompletely, or reconstruct to a more sophisticated version of their original narcissismo. Here's something that no one tells você about narcissistic breaking points. They can be extremely traumatic para family members to witness. Seeing someone você care about undergo complete psychological disintegration, even quando that disintegration is necessary and overdue, can create lasting trauma in observers. Peterson frequently works not only com narcissistas who have broken, mas com their families who are trying to process the experience of watching someone they love lose all sense of coherent identity. The psychological impact on children especially can be severe and long-lasting. O que você vai discover now will transform your understanding of intervention timing and responsibility. Peterson revealed that genuine breaking points cannot be artificially created, scheduled, or controlled through external pressure. They occur quando the narcissista's psychological structure can no longer maintain its defensive architecture against converging pressures, attempting to force a breaking point through coordinated intervention, confrontation, or removal of support systems could backfire spectacularly. Instead of breaking defensively, narcissistas may develop even more elaborate defense mechanisms, become more manipulative. You direct their rage toward those who attempted the intervention. This means that families and friends of narcissistas often find themselves in a terrible dilemma. Wanting the breaking point might lead to genuine change, mas sendo unable to safely create or control quando it happens. The breaking point comes quando it comes, not quando others decide it should. Peterson também warns about something profoundly disturbing. Nossa contemporary society makes genuine breaking points extremely rare para narcisistas. Social media provides endless sources of validation. Polarized political environments allow people to find communities that will support virtually any self-narrative. Therapeutic cultures can avoid confrontation. Allow people to feel like they're growing without actually changing. This means that many narcissistas can now go their entire lives without ever encountering the convergence of factors necessary para genuine breaking. They can maintain their destructive patterns indefinitely while believing they are constantly evolving, improving. Here's the final truth, que will haunt você. If genuine narcissistic breaking points are so rare and so difficult to achieve safely, what does this mean para the people who have been systematically harmed by narcisistas? Peterson suggests that most victims will never see their abusers genuinely break or reconstruct. Most will never receive complete acknowledgement to witness lasting change. This places an enormous burden on victims. They must build their healing, their boundaries, their future without waiting para breaking points that may never come, who may result in even more sophisticated manipulation when they do occur. É uma harsh reality que requires accepting that justice may not come from the narcissista's transformation. The ultimate message é both sobering e empowering. Don't wait para narcissistas to break. Build your life, your relationships, your sense of security in ways that don't depend on their capacity para genuine change. Because true strength comes not from witnessing their collapse, mas from constructing your own foundation that remains stable regardless of whether they ever develop authentic self-awareness. Real victory over narcissistic abuse comes not from watching your abuser break, mas from breaking free yourself, understanding their patterns, accepting their limitations, e building uma life onde their capacity para transformation é relevant to your own well-being e growth. Se você chegou até aqui, you're beginning to understand that your healing doesn't depend on their breaking. No próximo vídeo, vamos explore how Jordan Peterson analyzes the awakening process. Those rare moments quando narcissistas actually begin to see their true impact on others. And why this awakening could be even more dangerous than their continued unconsciousness. Subscribe and activate notifications, because this journey está revealing truths about human psychology that will forever change how você understand the relationship between justice, healing, a personal transformation,